Stumble forward, stumble forward. The stumble forward, stumble forward. The stumble forward, do forward. The stumble forward, stumble forward. The stumble.
I'd like to welcome Craig Northey to the Stumble Forward. Craig is a founding member of beloved Canadian power pop rock band The Odds. He's also busied himself with many side projects, including Strippers Union with the Tragically Hip's Rob Baker, Northey Valenzuela with Jesse Valenzuela from the Gin Blossoms, and most recently the Trans Canada Highwaymen, featuring Mo Berg, Stephen Page, and Chris Murphy. Not to mention the soundtrack work for Kids in the Hall and Corner Gas. He's a world-class doll, and I'm happy to have him here today. Welcome, Craig Northey.
Thanks for welcoming me. It's fun to be here, Hawksley.
It's a blessing to be able to see you again. Where are you right now?
I'm in my little shack out back, that musicians have.
Yeah, I've got one. That's where I am too. It's I love my shack more and more. How long have you had your shack?
25 years, maybe.
So, do you have an evolving love of it, or has there been moments where you've hated the damn place?
Yeah, there's moments where you go, I just really don't want to go out there right now. But those are rare. You get to the burnout phase sometimes, depending on what you're doing.
Which, is it's kind of the theme of some of the questions I had thought to want to shoot your way, which is this work ethic thing. I mean, I follow you on social media, so I see the amount of movement and work in your life. Why are you doing all this?
I think it's probably the same feeling you have, because you are, as we've discussed in the past, very prolific, and you move a lot as well. I just know, I guess I'm compelled. I think there's something good in there that I got to get out, and I haven't done it well enough yet. Perhaps it's that. Also, just keeping things rolling in your life. They get complex and you need resources, and in order to do that with creative pursuits, it takes a lot of work.
Yeah. I feel like I'm noticing, but you're Gen X, right? You're
this
Gen
is
X.
a debate. It's really a debate because I'm in an overlapping area, but yeah. The Boomer 2 / Gen X.
It feels like there's a lot of folks, let's just say in the age spread where you and I inhabit, in the Canadian music business, that seem to be really doubling, tripling, quadrupling up on their output. I mean, for me, it's a lot about just the gratitude that I get to do this work at all. Mm-hmm. And it's an amazing opportunity once you sort of wake up to the fact that, I've stopped trying to get famous, from the early days. And nowadays I'm just very interested in the fact that I have a small audience and I get to be creative in a lot of modalities that, even in this podcast space, that I don't necessarily belong in, but heck, it doesn't mean I'm not going to try it. Is that your headspace a little bit?
Absolutely. I retired from the business a long time ago. And I don't know, there was a time when your band, it's a singular focus, and I come from a band thing, being in a band. That's everyone's singular focus. You're all behind it. You're working on this thing in order to get noticed, in order to have this career start. That's when I was in the business, when you're trying to find a way to get a foothold so that someone will let you do this over and over, will let you do what you want to do. And I think after that, seeing how that went, I didn't stay in that mode for very long. Once it happens, you kind of go, okay, well, I don't like that part. And so I'm going to do the minimum amount required in that area and just double down on the creative part. And so I consider myself retired from the business a long time ago. I don't know if that answered the question fully.
Well, it was a good adjacent partner to, I would say. Listening, I hear the Odds songs on the local indie rock radio station all the time. Like every day, mm-hmm. If I'm in the car going to and from, there's an excellent chance I'm going to hear one of the. I think they play 4 different singles, and I had a good listen to the new record Crash the Time Machine. Congratulations as well on that.
Thank you.
We communicated a bit when the first single came out. You have an uncompromising cleverness in what you do. Like, and I know that the word clever is maybe sounds slightly loaded. I don't mean it to be that way. Like, no stock chord progressions, always an interesting left turn on the musical chordal front, and no toss away lyrics. Like, again, fast forward all these years. I mean, that's the same Craig Northey I hear on the radio. I hear fascinating chord movements, very interesting lyrics. You know, it must have been an oddity on the radio in the 90s, let alone now. Why bother carrying this much all these years?
I don't know if I carry it. That's the thing. I think it's just what I like and what I hear in my brain as it's going down. And it plays on the radio station in my head as we speak about in our band. You know, it's if it plays on your radio station in your head and you love it when it comes on, that's what you're looking for. And sometimes it's made me feel like I can't figure out what makes something a hit or what makes something popular with people. I did a stint as a staff writer for a number of years where I was walking down a lonely hallway with my guitar to meet somebody new and make a connection and write with them. And a lot of times I really didn't know what to offer until I realized all I had to offer was my sensibilities. And whether that fucked them up or whether that helped them, I don't know. But we made a connection as human beings in that time, and we made something. And that was a triumph. It wasn't always a triumph where that song led or the piece of whatever we were doing led to. But I think that's all I've got. I don't know what to do other than what I do. And I push to stretch all the time. I think all of us do. You get interested in look at that. I squirrel and I see what someone else is doing creatively, and that goes in, and I listen to someone's records, and then it influences what I might do next. You know, some call, what do you call that? Stealing? I'm not sure.
I mean, look, I know. I mean, I ask it from the vantage point, or I frame it as an intellectual question, knowing or guessing at least that it's probably not an intellectual exercise. I know, like, that the person, that the body, the vessel, the creature of faith is the thing that kicks out the jams, and it's not necessarily something that you are chin stroking and running through the intellectual filter. But one can't help but assuming or wondering, I guess, over all these years, just that there has been a level of quality and attention to that detail when it would have been easier to just be running lowest common denominator. But I'm guessing when you get in front of a microphone or behind a guitar or a piano, however you write, that the version of yourself that appears there is making the big moves, and that your brain isn't considering, well, the kids are buying this these days and this is what I'm going to have to try and do. I'm guessing, like me, that your brilliance is in your gut, and that you're being led by your cells more than you are your brain. Is that true? Yeah, that's true. And you move forward, and I think the intellectualization of it is there in some ways. You do want quality. I think when you reference that, there's no throwaways, I think it's because maybe we're making music also and releasing music slower now as we have time together, gives you more time to reflect. And always on our albums, is in terms of odds, if we're being specific about that, it was there. These all have to be here or we're throwing them away. They all have to be one of those records that we loved that was 10 songs and just kicked your ass the whole way through, emotionally or whatever. And I find that the struggle now is internal to be a little bit more emotionally direct, because I think I was a fan of everything that obscured
metaphor. I was a fan of the Beatles. I was a fan of lyrics that made some kind of sense, but you had to work your way into the story, and there was some obfuscation. So that became part of, as we say, it wasn't an intellectual pursuit. That was my cellular structure. I had built myself to output that kind of way of doing things. And now the struggle is it's always been a struggle to distill and to make things more direct, but now to reveal a little more of myself without having somebody work so hard.
Are you still listening to a lot of music? Do you consider yourself somebody who is up to date, quote unquote, on music?
I don't consider myself up to date. I don't know if I like the idea of dates. I explore. Okay.
So when you're talking
eras. I just go anywhere that music takes me.
There must be some intellectuality in doing music for film and television, though, because there's a certain amount of hitting your spots and making sure that you're in your light and what have you. But when it comes time to be creative, it's time to just rip. Is that right? I haven't done much of that work, but it seems like it's a large part of your life.
It is, yeah, and I think you'd enjoy it in that the inspiration is kind of provided for you in a way. You're trying to honor an image. You're trying to honor someone else's vision. It's similar to co-writing in so many ways, but you're co-writing with a director, and you're creating in a realm. You're not creating just in this audio space. So you're trying to find things that work for the picture and to make it ring for somebody. So I think that's still, when it's really clicking, it's really awesome. It can be difficult because sometimes you get it wrong, and it's more about instant rejection and acceptance, and you have to learn that part of it. But I was invited into the world, and my whole thing is just to say yes to something that seems fun. and then the hard work comes and the learning comes and all that kind of stuff afterwards.
Yeah, I had a friend in Montreal who, after I was feeling some buyer's remorse after accepting a big theater composition gig, he said that middle-aged men should be putting themselves into difficult situations or uncomfortable positions more often, just to kind of keep that freshness. Does that resonate with you?
I never thought that. I just did it by accident because I said yes too often. Yeah.
That saying yes thing is a wonder, though. It's fun to be able to say no, and I know that there was times in my career over the years where my stock was in a place where a sweet no could feel pretty good. But definitely the yes now it definitely comes from that place of gratitude. Was the first film television stuff you were doing Kids in the Hall?
Yeah.
Was it Brain Candy?
Yeah. Brain Candy was the first real thing I did. And that was just thrown in the deep end. I was the nevermind baby going after the dollar bill on the hook or whatever. I was just I can do that because my friends asked me to do it, and I said sure. And back then it wasn't. There are a lot of technical things which were much more difficult back then in 1995 compared to now, and and it was a difficult time for them as well. So it was nothing was going to be as hard as that afterwards.
You guys were friends, is that right? You were friends with all of them or some of them?
All of them. And, it was a meeting of creative minds in a way between our band and their band. They were opening their first tour playing our first album before the show. And when they came to Vancouver, somebody said to them, "Who chooses this music?" Went to Al Miller, their sound guy, and he said, "Well, the guys do." So, well, I work for that band, and they're next door in the basement. Would you like to meet them? And then that's how it went. We've been friends ever since.
And what year would that have been?
91.
Wow. I mean, I feel like you and I have talked about this era and the Kids in the Hall's effect on sort of Canadian culture. As a rural kid in high school, I mean, I feel blessed that I was exposed to their sort of rowdy indie spirit at such a young age. I feel like as a kid, again, whiling away in the basement of a rural house, watching the footage of the opening theme song going down Bay Street past the old Cadillac dealership and what have you. It seemed like they were real indie punks. It felt like an indie spirit. Like you said, you know, it was your band and their band. It felt like rock music to me more than it felt like anything else, like sketch comedy. In fact, I don't think I would have even been able to draw the similarity between Saturday Night Live and what Kids in the Hall were doing. As a kid, I wouldn't have made that leap. To me, it was so unique. But there was a scene then. Like, is that true? Like, there was a music and comedy scene happening in Canada in the very early 90s? Is that true?
I think so. I don't know where it connected for everyone else. And I agree with you. We had the same feeling about them. And we were watching it just unfold as if, hey, this is us. This is how we feel. The Shadowy Man, the whole way it was presented. And so it was kind of, it attracted. And on that first show that we went to see, Brent Butt was opening. And I ended up meeting him that night too. So much opened up. And in Vancouver, Harry Dupe, Chris Finn, there were a bunch of comedians here who were always at shows. And then so we were always at their shows, or they were doing a bit before us. So there was a cross-pollination in Vancouver, at least. I can't speak for everywhere else. And that was before we made our way out of Vancouver too much.
I feel, because I did talk to Stephen Page a bit about this as well, and he remembers Corky and the Juice Pigs as being another sort of adjunct element to that Toronto comedy music collision that was happening in the early 90s. As a kid, like I said, in the sticks, dreaming of completing high school and heading off to Toronto to find my fortunes, that's what I was going to find, was what I was seeing in this collaborative event that seemed to be unfolding before my very own eyes on the national broadcaster, no less. I used to watch Kids in the Hall on the phone with my girlfriend, who was like an hour away, and that was our sort of absurdist escape from high school life. It sort of allowed us to feel real. So it's an interesting thing, and I know that it's all serendipity, and that those communities, you're not thinking in the moment, wow, we're really a part of a scene that one day somebody's going to look back and sort of crystallize and try to understand how those minds met. You were just busy doing you, and so was everybody else. It just so happened that there was just a lot of synchronicity.
Absolutely. Yeah, and speaking of Stephen and that connection, those guys, the Bare Naked Ladies, when they walked into our lives, we were doing a shtick band on the Granville Strip that attracted a very diverse crowd of ne'er-do-wells, college kids, etc., where we had wigs and glasses, and we were a phony British invasion band, and that was our moonlighting gig, to earn money and practice downstairs, write music, open for ourselves upstairs, and on Thursdays we opened for ourselves. And, we just changed the words. We abused people in the audience. And those guys walked in. They were in town making a record. We had met once before. And they were on stage within 2 minutes with us. Because they saw, oh my gosh, they think the way let's go up there. And, as you know, I still work with Stephen and love it. So,
yeah, can we talk about that for a sec? When I was a kid practicing the drums in the basement, my whole goal was to move to Toronto to become a side guy. That was the dream. And here you are in some ways living the dream. You get to sort of enjoy this being a guitar player and a background singer. Is it less pressure? It is less pressure being out there. Steven's name is on the sign out front. He's on the ticket, but you still get to enjoy the process. Is it great just being the side person in a group? Is this a dream fulfilled for you?
It wasn't one of my dreams, but yeah, there's a little bit of both things in the Stephen Page trio gig for sure. Is that it's so pared down, and there's you have to have such symbiosis with three players and no real rhythm section that it's an instant challenge that you have to do it well. You have to really pour your musicality into it and yourself into it. And there's a real band vibe, but it is a band. And so you feel like you're part of it more than just a session player or a accompanist. And I write with Stephen too and help out on records and whatever's required. And I, was just saying to my partner the other day, where she just sort of said out of the blue, "What are your plans for the future?" And I said,
"Is she starting a podcast?"
Sometimes, as you know, if you have a partner, often that's a question. And you often think, you mean in the next hour? But no, in general. And she was just being thoughtful. She probably was going to share her ideas. And I said, keep going. Like, this is my plan. It's a sort of a Stephen Page mantra as well. Keep going. Keep going.
Yeah. I feel like, I'm obsessed with lifers in the music business because they're a unique breed of, the stick around, the want to stick around is serious business. And I feel that as well. It's even maybe wrapped slightly in the fear that if I did even pause, that the treadmill might then disappear or be moving slower when I jump back on, or faster, or it seems like best practice to just stick with the pace and not deviate. Is it based in any fear for you, or is it just pure animal logic of you've got this metabolic machine in you that's pushing you forward? You have a youthful face and you still have a lot of vim. Mm-hmm. Are you just being informed again? Is this just a cellular progress? Like, don't stop, hasn't stopped, won't stop?
Lately, I feel super lucky. I feel lucky to be doing this, but I also feel like I got a bunch of things going on, and I don't feel overtaxed at this moment, doing a bunch of things, and I'm really amazed that people are still interested. So I'm enjoying it, and I'm trying not to think about it too much, because I've been in the other places where you're just pushing a rock up a hill. So right now it's pretty good. So there's not much wood around here, but I'd tap it.
I bring up Sisyphus all the time.
Yeah.
To me, there's nothing that describes the music business better than that parable.
Sisyphus with syphilis.
What a struggle.
Yeah, it's so hard.
The poor guy.
So hard. It saps your energy.
It was already hard.
It saps your energy. It was fun. You're paying for it. Yeah.
I've been thinking about doing a podcast for a long time, but I wanted to do a comedy podcast, or I wanted to talk to comedians because I had this sense that most comedians want to be musicians, and most musicians, at least the ones I know, want to be comedians. And I love comedy because you can't lip sync it. It's almost like one of the last truly great meritocratic art forms where if people are laughing, you're bona fide, you're funny. Mm-hmm. If people aren't laughing, I don't know what to tell you. It's science. And I love that. And there's something about this, and And maybe too, I have a love of sports, which I know you do. I married into a real sports loving family, and I learn a lot from, especially seeing sports live, about the danger and risk and just extreme serendipity of watching sports unfold. I've always sort of thought what I do on stage, I hope, is a lot more like sports to some degree, with a lot more potential of risk and things falling apart and winners becoming losers and vice versa. And I think that the comedy feels closer to that as well. It's more sport-like. There's something zero-sum about it. Like if it's not working, it really doesn't work, you know? Music can kind of hobble along. It can appear in the corner of a bar and sort of just be annoying, or, you know, some singer with an acoustic in a pub can kind of keep, you know, can just be there. But it feels like sports and comedy are a real focus. Am I touching on anything that makes sense to you?
I think the meritocratic thing, the danger and the passion required to do that, knowing those are the risks, make the similarities. And also, like, I look at you and I watch you and your pared down elements, say you or you with Toddy, and I think that there's so much that can go wrong, and there's so much that can go super right because you're able to make that quick connection faster. You're not bombarding somebody with the hey, look over here, there's drums, look over here, there's lights, and there's not as much to it. And I think you like to go there. You thrive in that situation. So maybe that's your comedy showing, that's your sports showing. I've run away from that for so long on the individual level, on a solo show, or that's maybe why I really like the Stephen Page Trio gig a lot, because it's really that everything's hanging, anything can go wrong, and we constantly go into those areas. An odd show is a lot of bluster, and you stare people down and you just go, and it's I love that too. I love all elements of it. And then I say weird things, and everyone in the band looks at me and goes, he talks really low, so he could have said anything. Is it something bad going to happen to us in a minute?
I heard you talking to Terry David Mulligan, and you said that the night before any odds gig is like Christmas Eve. And you said it's been like that since the beginning. Is that true?
Yep.
I mean, I'm tickled to hear this. What is it? I mean, I still love it as well, but I don't know about Christmas Eve. What is the anticipation? I guess the shared love of the people that you get to be with on stage. What is it for you? What is the part that you look forward to the most about the live show?
It's the whole package. It's getting, and the funny thing is I would sort of extend that feeling into almost anything I do now. I feel really lucky to play a note that I believe in, that is me, that I'm putting out there. It's when you do it, it's you're putting out there. And to have people go, yeah, keep going. We want more of this. You play one more song? You know, that's amazing. And I think the odds thing is a little rarer now as you get older and your lives become more complex, and we have a bit of a broken history as a band too. You really appreciate the fact that you were actually there in the same room, that you're actually doing that stuff. And there's a lot for that Christmas Eve feeling. It's that I get to see those people. They're going to show up at the airport. We're all going to meet, and we're going on an adventure. It might seem to others that, hey, you've been doing this 36 years. Is it the same adventure? You're going to the same city that you might have gone 20 times before, maybe more. And it's different every time.
I completely understand this. I mean, there are bonds forged in road life that are, I'm sure, very much like, what maybe somebody in the military, or I don't know. So it's where you're closed in, You're sort of suffering the bumps and bruises. You're all sort of taking it on the chin together when things are low, and when things are high, you're all celebrating the victory together too. And then, at least from my perspective, is it does feel over the years like you become this mini army of 5 to 10 people, depending on how large the touring party is, and it's you against the world. And for it doesn't start out. It's not adversarial, but it does sort of feel like you're always moving into somewhere where you don't live, where you don't have a fridge and you don't have your coffee maker, you don't have the stuff. So you're marauding and taking what you can to create the comforts you can for one another, and laughing at each other's jokes and smelling each other's, decomposing carcasses over the stretch of time. And that stuff adds up to a real love.
Yeah.
Would you agree?
Absolutely. And we have this joke in the band that all the tours are, everyone has a really cool name for their tour. Our tours are all the same. They're Making It and then the year. So right now we're in Making It 23, You're playing for the person who's never seen you to this day. And we're playing for people who've heard us on that radio station you mentioned that plays us all the time, who are the kid of the person who went to see us in college. And they are, they love it because they were force-fed it or whatever. And they've never seen us. And they're going, oh my God, how are they doing that without breaking something? They're enjoying the show. And so it's making it every time. We feel like, even though we're playing some old chestnuts, better giver, because we're in this town and we might not get another chance to convert these people to our gospel.
Without getting too, I just, when I hear Heterosexual Man on my local station, it's Freak 90.5. I love it. It's a great station. It's an independent indie rock station. I think about that song, and again, this is in no way to strike up anything that would be any risky political discussion, but it does feel in some ways like there must have been some inherent risk to write and sing that song back in the day, and that it's aged as well as it has. And in some ways, the statement that's made in that song feels in some ways even slightly more poignant today, given how society has refocused a lot of its feelings and sensibilities around men and gender. Do you have any thoughts on that, or do you think about that song? Do you still play it live?
We haven't in Making It 23. We have such a conflicted history with it, because you're correct. It was taken, it's satirical and it's about men behaving badly. And as a number of our songs are, 2 that I can think of. So that's a number. So in the day, it was taken as a direct statement, and there was a lot of moshing and male testosterone. The hats would go on backwards and someone would come in pounding in the crowd when that song came on. And so we stopped playing it until people got their behavior together and understood what we were talking about. We went on call-in shows about that song at the time and had to explain ourselves to people who were up in arms about it. And we thought the Kids in the Hall video might make it clear, but in a lot of ways it did. But now we're in a different era where people have embraced those energies again. It's a scary world out there for people who are being satirical about something like that, and comedy's in a weird position too. So sometimes we feel like we did a bad job with the satire, that it wasn't clear enough. Did we have to make it more cartoonish? Does Randy Newman have to think about any of those things? We don't know. So it's a weird song. One thing, it's got a nice groove and a nice, it's got a cool feel, and that's all Stephen Drake. The song's completely him.
Yeah, the riff is nifty. The way all of that, it's liquid and fun and watery, and it's a great up. I mean, I didn't know the history of that song. It's it allows me some moments to consider how bright you are whenever I hear that song on the radio, and to think that a song can get written and then have a 40-year history and sort of live on the radio in a almost passive way, but given the fact that it pokes up in time, the song is perceived differently, despite the fact that you've written it with an intention however many decades, odd years ago, that it lives because people loved it then, and it still, makes you pennies when I hear it in Peterborough here, and that it can mean different things through those years, I guess.
I think contextually, I know that it created a lot of internal discussion, and there's a lot of discussion about that in the band when it was written. And Stephen, I can't speak to his intentions writing the song, but we knew who he was and those kind of things. But our record company heard it and thought, that's the single. And at that point, we'd had one album, and now this next one, we knew that it was hooky, but we felt it was a novelty and didn't speak to what the rest of our work was. And or some of us did. I think Stephen was fine with it being a single and everything. He was right. But it did cause, okay, now we're the jokey band. We're joking about something. And so like the back cover of that Bedbugs record that it was on is us finally getting a good picture of our band, not mugging at the camera because we were having an argument about, I'm leaving this band. You guys are fucked. This is stupid. This is the dumbest thing in the world that this song's going to come out as the single. And the photographer captured that moment. Finally, we had a good picture of our band, a nice YouTube brooding kind of picture.
So there's been consternation around this song. I hope you don't mind me bringing it up.
No, bring up anything.
No. Okay, so there has been consternation around this song since day one, is what you're saying.
Yeah, because I think it was effective. It created a unique vibe. But now in the mood of the times, we don't want to throw any fire on anybody's intolerance. And in some ways we think about it going, this song isn't worth it. People are just, and now they just hear the riff, they hear the words, and they're not thinking about them in terms of people who know us well. They're just going, I'm going to dance now. They don't think about what it is. So that's how we know the song now.
Do you think about legacy? Is like, I think about, even the other day, your wife saying, hey, what's your future? Like, are you thinking about how you will be remembered? I mean, it's a ridiculous question. I'm guessing you don't, but it's worth bringing up.
Well, I like all the things you said to intro. I was very flattered by all the things you said. That would be nice if people thought that. But I hope they had a good time and the music was part of their life when they needed it, or part of their life that they remember, not the tragedy that happened, but the song reflects on what was good about a moment in their life. And I think that's all you can hope. I think most of this stuff is going to disappear. We're not going to be Napoleon, or we're not going to be known in the same way as any major event. We're just a band. If somebody remembers you in 10 years, that's pretty amazing.
It is amazing. I have a friend here in Peterborough who won a silver medal in the Olympics as a rower, and he and we go for walks on the regular. And one of his big themes is he thinks that we should be celebrating moderate success a lot more. In his mind, we only see the biggest versions of success when the trickle down of success, it's quite dynamic, I think. And I think he's probably right. Even on the Terry David Mulligan interview you had said that you measure the success of the odds by the fact that you get off planes almost anywhere you go and see somebody that you love. And I was quite struck by that. The love, the relationships that are created in this industry over time are become one of the biggest reasons I still love my job and am so grateful for it. Even the fact that you and I hadn't really met, and whatever, 5-10 years ago, you and I went out for a run one morning.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, just by virtue of the fact that we're both, you know, guitar playing singer guys, for some reason that opens the door to us all of a sudden. Well, we're supposed to be friends then, going out for a run
Mm-hmm.
in Vancouver some morning. To me, this is kind of the magic of what it is we do.
Yep.
Are these relationships that have been fostered over these years.
Yeah. I mean, if somebody says to you, I don't know if I talked to Terry about it, but you get it quite often probably everybody, Dutch people get this from their Dutch fans. It's a shame that you weren't more famous everywhere else, and that you're just famous here or whatever, and that you haven't been successful. And you look at them and you go, what the heck are you talking about? Like, do you know that Hawksley can get off a plane in any town in England and probably have 5 friends right away that he knows? Or, you know, that's the success. Those are the connections, the support network that you get. And this thing you're talking about, oh, he plays guitar. I like his music. Let's call that guy and go for a run. And it's amazing. We may not have the health insurance. We may not have all these things for our retirement, but we have that. That's our support network. That's what's there for us.
Can we talk a little bit about drinking?
Sure.
Alcohol? Because I'm reminded by the fact that I was so dreadfully hungover at that run we did, and you were one of the first few people when I was starting to get a little bit sober curious that you had made mention of taking time off, or that you had been off for quite a long stretch. And I was accumulating stories from people around me in the business who had seemed to have had a similar trajectory that I was on, yet had come out ahead and figured a way out of it. And I don't think young people in the music business are necessarily that the allure for alcohol is the same as it was. It feels like back in the day, rock bands were more or less glorified sellers of beer at clubs. I mean, rock and roll and alcohol kind of went hand in hand. The wanton celebration of every night after a gig, like when you're young, you're not perceiving what you're doing as anything other than deserved. You know, I just got off stage from rocking all these people. Are you kidding me? Of course I'm going to drain this bottle of wine. What is the journey that you've been on with that? And if you don't mind, I'm not looking, it doesn't need to be a self-help thing. I'm just interested because it's some of us in this business either don't leave that habitual pattern, and then some sort of wake up from it and go, geez, I need to make a change. Where are you at with it these days?
That's a complex one. I think for all of us, I don't know anyone who's listening, it usually starts in your teens. And for me, it didn't really end that constant, I got to celebrate this, or I need it to get through the gig. I needed to get into it. Early in the odds, in the late 80s, the other 3 guys said, you know that you don't need to be smashed just to get on stage, and we're going to figure out a way. And so they helped me understand, just by playing 4 sets a night in our shtick band, that it became a thing that I could not even think about and get up on stage. And I wasn't nervous. I wasn't any of those things. So I probably was dealing with all kinds of other things. I come from a classical music background, and I used to throw up before my recitals or that kind of stuff. And so I was obviously sort of self-medicating at that point. And then I got some good advice from my peers that I should probably not do that, and I would be a better musician. And that led to, okay, so I'll do it after, or I'll do it during. And so I did that for years. And maybe at the point where I met you, I was at one of the several points where I was taking a break. And I constantly do that now. I'm juggling it back and forth. And I don't have a diagnosis. So I think that I'm probably a common model at my age of a musician. It's just,
Yeah.
it's a, not only that, like a salesman of beer, it's a situational hazard. It's everywhere. Everybody wants you to do it with them. And I don't think that's much different than anyone else in their job after work.
I think you're right. I think when I last saw you in Vancouver and you had, I'm a sort of an all or nothing type character. None or nine is what I always used to say back in my drinking days. My wife would be like, well, can't you just have one? And like one. Like, I don't do anything one. I do everything 9 or none. I don't, it applies to almost every aspect of my life. But your sort of more balanced approach of, it's happened. I'm having a few drinks right now, but maybe at a later date I won't. It was nice to welcome that idea of it not being so. We were in Italy a few months back, and I did have some wine after not having had a drink for 4 years, and it had really no allure. Like, the single glass of wonderful wine was like, well, this is lovely stuff. Like, I mean, I remember liking this, but in no way it had been treated as an enemy in my own psyche for so long that I was nervous to even have that stuff touch my lips. And then when it did, it all felt somewhat inconsequential. Like, one glass later, I'm like, yeah, that's great. I'm glad I'm in Italy enjoying this product of the local vinter, but in no way does this thing seem anywhere near as beguiling as it did 4 years ago when it created a need for itself. And it's just mostly uninteresting now, beyond the fact that it tastes nice.
Yes. And I think I began to vilify it in my mid-20s, especially, well, my partner did, especially on my behalf. And she's in healthcare. So, I always have those things. I mean, we talk about our support networks, and I talk about our connections and what's made us successful. And of course, she's the biggest. So I think that tempers my consumption, at all times. I'm thinking about it always. And I don't make the same kind of mistakes now as a result. So, and I'm lucky because I don't think that's possible for a lot of people. I know that people should just stop.
Yeah. So it sounds like the odds had their heads on straight in the 80s. Like, if you were already asking questions about this stuff when you guys were just in your Sisyphean rock push up the hill, the starting phase of your career, if you were already thinking those thoughts, then there must have been some brain power at work there. Who was the mature one?
I think it's funny that it might always be Doug Elliott, but it is kind of his band, and he's a super talented musician and a very wise person, but at the same time he's crazy and funny. So he's got this illusion that he's immature when he's probably the most. And and Stephen, everybody did end up having their struggles, as all people do. But at that point, we were really focused, and they were ahead of me on the curve of being professional musicians. I was a guy who plowed back every dime I ever made playing a gig into what I was doing, and usually came out behind anyway. And they were already in 13 bands at a time, and if they didn't get their $20, then it was, it wasn't fair. Everybody got paid something. So they taught me that, and they taught me the kind of discipline that I needed to have. And we held each other to a high standard to get that thing going when we were in the business, back when I was saying before I retired. So I
only know you and Pat, and you're both, obviously incredibly remarkable human beings. I can only assume that the other two round out an intellectual or spiritual, knockout punch. So this is good. This is these communities of people that we end up gravitating towards or that come to us magnetically, like this is, again, the love of the humans that we get to meet in our travels that you're talking about. I often think about how if there's news on about Canada, that in my mind's eye, I can usually conjure up almost anywhere that's in the news because I've been almost everywhere that there is to go. And even that is a joy to get off planes and to be able to conjure up an image of what does North Battleford look like? What does Sherbrooke, Quebec look like? You know, when you're sharing those adventures with those people too, you have that collective experience of having given and received as, you know, tourists who do a little side hustle to kind of even up the score when you are in a city. You don't just take, you kind of get to leave a little bit before you leave. I really am grateful for the chat, Craig.
Me too. It's very interesting. There's questions that you ask that people don't ask. Not that they shouldn't ask. That's not what I meant. Hawksley, I didn't mean that. I meant that they don't often ask. So it's interesting to, as we talk about pushing forward to the challenges, that's better. It's good for me.
Thanks, Craig.
Thank you.
The Stumble Forward is an Isadora Media production and is hosted by Hawksley Workman and produced by Jennifer Kavanaugh. Be sure to subscribe and follow The Stumble Forward. You can support the podcast at patreon.com/Hawksley Workman. Thank you for listening.
Stumble forward, the stumble forward.